Testing.
Hello.
Hey.
Okay. There we go. We can be heard.
Hello,
Good.
everybody.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Deathbane.
Welcome back from Disney. He sent me some cool pictures.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, aren't you special? Welcome back, Deathbane. Good to have you here. And hello to everyone who is joining in today. We are going to be talking about that big old thing that everyone else is talking about, so I'm sure you're super excited. Roe versus...
No.
Oh, God! The time in which you brought that
no.
up. Roe versus Wade and the potential throwing that back to the states rather than that being a whole federal thing. So what my goal is for this is for us to share our thoughts and to open up a space for you to share your thoughts so that together we can find better ways of thinking about it. So let's jump into that.
Yes, let's jump in.
Welcome back to ThoughtRaid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. Today, yes?
This is Brandon.
This is,
I'm
that's
Tim.
right.
Proper introduction.
Where have I been? We've done things differently now for a bit that I've forgotten the usual introductions.
Yes.
So, I'm Brandon, this is Tim, and today we're talking about Roe versus Wade.
This is going to be an interesting topic because, usually we talk about porn and just random things, but there's a lot of stuff out there that's really confusing, and depending on which side you look at it, it just seems like, oh, there is a clear answer, but when you engage with people, there's obviously not a clear answer because the whole nation's divided.
Yeah, and this is one of those things, I think this is an important thing for us to talk about because I know it's on a lot of people's minds, and I really want ThoughtRaid to be a place for us to talk about our thoughts on stuff. So that's what this is for Tim and I to share our thoughts on it, and for you guys to share your thoughts on it. And we welcome you to bring questions and your opinions on it. And I do not guarantee that I will agree with some of the things that are said, nor do I expect you to agree with what we say. So we both have the equal free space. But I definitely want to just kind of open the table to this.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, especially with stuff like this, it can be really easy to become uncivil because there's so much social justice that we feel like is at stake. Whether we disagree or agree on this, I just want to let you guys know that we still love you. We hope that you still like us. Because honestly, I think Brandon and I see a little differently on this.
Maybe.
And so we're not trying to be right. We're just trying to figure out what people think and test why we think what we think and why you think what you think. So it's more of an invitation rather than we're trying to convince you otherwise.
I'm personally wanting to dig for the truth into the matter and look, because I know there is truth. And I don't think it's a universal, like, hey, your truth be your truth kind of thing. I think there is one that regardless if someone accepts it as truth or not, still does not change that. But that does not mean that I am here to, like, say, if we disagree, you're a terrible person, or that you should not bring your opinions or whatever. Like, this is a place for us, again, to just kind of bring it all out. But with all of that opening statement.
All right, so Roe versus Wade. And I feel like historically I don't do a lot of research with things. I'm not up to date when it comes to history.
So it's fresh because I know you've been doing some research recently.
I don't know exactly how much research I've been doing. I just know that Roe versus Wade, if you guys don't know, was a trial back in 1972, I believe, that gave women, I don't want to say just women, but gave people rights to choose an abortion in a situation where they were pregnant. So they were given the right legally to choose an abortion. It's being overturned, apparently. And so you said something about it becoming more of a state-mandated thing or state-navigated thing?
Yeah, so what's currently, to my understanding, what's currently going on is they're deciding whether this is going to be a federal thing that is protected or if this is going to be something that's kicked back to the states. So if this gets overturned in the Supreme Court, it is not that abortion is not possible. It is that it is no longer up to the whole of the country, the federal, to make that decision. It is then thrown back to the states, and each individual state has the ability to decide whether they want abortion or not, and to what degree in their state. So I feel like there has been some, and I think it's been clarified as time goes along, misunderstandings of that it's going to be gone entirely. It's not. It's just going to be a state decision, which gives, honestly, the people a little bit more control over whether it should or should not happen than if it's just held at the highest level, which is federal.
Yeah. Well, so I want to jump right in with the big question that a lot of people are asking, and I don't want to. I want to be really careful here because there's a lot of exposition that's necessary to understand why we think what we think. And when we ask a question, I want to invite you guys to provide what you think in the comments as well. Let us know live so we can talk about it with you, or just amongst ourselves if you don't want to participate. But as for, when it comes to abortion, right or wrong?
Okay, I saw you write that there, and this is one of those things where there is a lot of wrong, but there is some places where it may be necessary and right. Because that's something that when this whole thing became much more of a reality, the first thing I saw pop up on my news feed from one of the people that I was friends with that I'd known in the past, they gave this list of how they were not for killing of babies, but they were for these different rights, these different things. And some of it was like, okay, to me, it really doesn't matter to me. Some of these circumstances, like I may not be in a financially good place. I may not be, in the right mental space. I may not be like that. Those type of things was like,
when you say it doesn't matter to you, what do you mean?
What I mean by that is like I understand how much it would suck to not be in a financial place, and now there's a baby on the way. What am I going to do about said baby? I understand those things, but I see beyond that. I see there's still a life that's inside of you that's not your own. It may be your body that is holding this child, but this child is still separate from you. It's not all exclusively your DNA. It is a combination of you and the other person's DNA coming together to create a completely different person that we know biblically God is forming together in your womb. And so there's a lot of circumstances that are like, I don't know, I can't really stand beside this as this is a valid reason for abortion. Maybe adoption, and that's one thing, but I wouldn't say abortion. And then there were some other things that were like, okay, that's something to be considered. Like, this is something that I think Daniel brought up to you about ectopic.
Ectopic.
Is it abortion or
ectopic?
Pregnancy? I don't know exactly what that is. If you're watching this, Daniel, can you please clarify what that is?
I can tell you because
I know what it is, but I mean, like, if it's called ectopic, I think I'm saying it right. But essentially, it's the egg. It's been fertilized, but it's outside the womb. Was it
the uterus?
The uterus. So it actually like is going to be a real threat to the life of the woman. That's one thing. And if the baby, like, and there was another one that was brought up, what if the baby's already dead? That's another thing too.
I have a friend in real life who had this issue where his mate was pregnant, and she had some kind of immune disease where she could not ward off any sicknesses, and she got sick. And so they had to decide, and she was several months pregnant, they had to decide, okay, are we going to abort this baby and giving her the medicine that she needs to survive? Or are we just going to let her continue to be sick so the baby doesn't get killed by the medicine, and thereby, sacrificing her life for the baby? And it's like one of those, like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah. And that'd be another one, one of those gray areas to navigate. I do admit that is definitely when you have to decide between the baby dying or the mother dying. Yeah, and that's one of those gray areas for sure I can see.
That's also a much different circumstance, because I think a lot of times when we think about abortion, it's really easy to go to the place of, okay, all abortions are coat hanger abortions, to a degree, like, just to put it drastically or dramatically, because and that's how I used to think, like, okay, if you're getting an abortion, basically you're just going in there and this is just this evil thing. right? And I'm not saying that I'm for abortions either. I'm not saying I'm not pronouncing my stance on it just yet. We're gonna get in that later. But I'm just saying, like, that's how I viewed it, And then when this happened to my friend, there was a little bit more empathy because I was closer to the circumstance. It's like, well, what do you choose? Because I was no longer, okay, out of sight, out of mind. And I think that's really easy for a lot of us, especially Christians that like to just say, well, here's the truth. Here's what you should believe. It's just because when you're a Christian, you're walking with Jesus. What that actually means is to feel things with people, to experience things with people, because walking with Jesus is all about relationship. It's not about just putting a holy Band-Aid on it and be healed, my brother, in Jesus' name.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like in those situations where you come up and the person's life is in the balance just by having the child, those are situations where I would have to figure out what to do. Like in those moments, what I would do if my wife's life was on the line just by having this child, my first objective would be to talk to her about it, figure out what she wants to do, and then see, is it viable that we could pray, and for a period of time stand in belief that this will be something that God will protect us or heal her or heal the situation, so we not lose the child. But then if that doesn't happen, that's a situation where I can very much so understand and almost rationalize having an abortion for that situation. Mm-hmm. But then there are other ones where it's just like, and that's the thing. This time around with the whole debate about Roe versus Wade, like you previously, it was just like all abortion is absolutely terrible and should not be done. But in those situations where someone actually legitimately could die, it's just been an interesting thought experiment for me, a situation I haven't been through yet, and it's something that I'm wondering. One thing I want to know is if they end up having. If a woman ends up in that situation whereby having this child would actually end her life, is an abortion clinic even necessary for that? Or isn't there already things established in hospitals to take care of something like that? Because I kind of feel like that would exist already in a hospital. And if you're watching this and if you work in the hospital and you work in places with, what's the word? I can't think of the word. I'm drawing a blank. Prenatal. If you work in that situation, let us know. Is there already options available to women if they could very likely be that the baby could kill her? If there's like options to take care of that situation to abort the child then? Because I think one thing that I'm more so against is abortion clinics than I am having a solution to take care of a baby that could potentially kill the woman.
I want to be careful with that too, because if we go down the rabbit trail of abortion clinics, I feel like that's a completely different beast than just Roe versus Wade. Because right now we're just talking about, okay, should people be able to choose, I want an abortion or not? I don't know, just my 2 cents on that. I think
we'll go on. You open this can of worms, go on.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't want to pursue that just yet, but thinking about the whole concept of is abortion right or wrong, the picture that a lot of us get in our minds is, are you conservative or liberal? It's like you're put in one of those two camps just by choosing right or wrong. And I think, if I hazard, okay, well, maybe it's a little bit more gray than a black and white. It makes it really difficult to legislate morality in that way and say, okay, well, this is, against the law. But at the same time, how do you qualify that? How do you qualify? Okay, well, who qualifies for an abortion if it's healthy and right, if that's such a thing, which is what we're trying to figure out. How do you qualify that? Because there are definitely going to be people that are going to try and work the system to their benefit to get what they want. I mean, that happens with everything from, welfare to healthcare. I mean, we see it all the time in the emergency room. People come in, they're like, I'm hungry. Well, this isn't a cafeteria. Well, I'm suicidal. Okay, well, we have to admit you and give you food now. There are hot button terms that people just say to get what they want. Not saying I don't want to dismiss people that are trying to navigate abortion and everything. I don't want to invalidate or minimize that. So please don't take it that way. I'm just saying, regardless of whatever the ruling is going to be, there's always going to be people that work the system
Why even celebrate Mother's Day? What?
Oh, we got some spicy memes going on
Yes,
already.
clearly.
But talking about, is it right or wrong?
I think it's circumstantial.
I think it's circumstantial too, but then, you have all the Bible thumpers and the Baptists, and I'm just kidding, guys, kind of, that are going to say, well, truth is not circumstantial, but I don't know. I really wonder. But I'm also not saying universalism is the thing where your truth is your
No.
truth.
And that's why I started to talk about in the very beginning. I don't believe that everyone has a truth and it's all true. Like, I do think there is a truth that, regardless if you think it's true or not, is still that. But I do think that there are different situations involved in this that we must be conscientious of, for sure. And I kind of do want to let's throw ourselves into some hot water here and really bring out. I will. I don't know if you will, Tim. I'll throw myself on the pyre here. Wow, bye. I'm going to throw myself in the pyre here, but first, I don't think it is right or wrong. I think it is neutral. As I'm about ready to go into here, I feel like there are situations where this is not okay, and then there's situations where this is something actually to be considered and a valid option. And like I said, in the situations where the baby is already dead, and just having the baby born, and there are the baby, the life is gone, and carrying a dead baby, that's in that case, that the life is gone, abort the child, or in this case, abort the corpse. In the situation,
Brandon, you really shouldn't laugh about that. People like, I'm kidding.
I have a tendency to just laugh about a lot of things. I'm not trying to make fun of the situation. I do want to clarify, since you just brought that out, Tim. Thank you, Tim. I do have a laugh for a lot of different situations, and it's not to make fun of things. I don't know exactly how to navigate this situation, and then I just laugh because I don't know how to navigate it, or someone's coming at me aggressively.
Yeah, I do. I can just totally see somebody watching this in the future and being like, "Oh, he was talking about abort a corpse. Haha, that's not funny, bro." And cancel culture.
Yeah. Either way, but again, so where was I? So yeah, in the situation where the child is already dead, in the situation where, again, the child would cause for the mother to die, that's another one of those areas where it's it would depend. I feel like that's a decision that must be up to her. She needs to decide, do I want to risk my life and have this child? Because I know that the Bible talks about no greater love than to sacrifice your life for another. So I know if she's willing to do that, that's one thing, but I would desperately pray that doesn't happen. But then if she doesn't, then I could also very much so understand that too, because it literally could kill her. What's Timothy B. saying here? You touched on one of the big three exceptions, a woman's life in danger. But what about abortion, the case of incest and rape? So I'm willing to jump into that hot water.
Want to
Are you willing
to? Yeah,
I
was going to pop that open because I got a couple points here. We were talking about right or wrong. But I think something that really aggravates a lot of people, especially in a culture where, especially in the past decade or so, everybody's on this movement of, I'm trying to figure out me. It's all about me. And I want to be very careful with this too, because it is really important for people to love themselves and to go through that process of identifying where they
love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't love yourself,
you're
not going to love your neighbor well.
But I think, especially my generation and younger, has a very difficult time navigating what's fair from what's right. And I say that with absolute solidarity with people that go through this stuff. I'm not saying that, and I don't want to invalidate the feelings or the circumstances of people that may be the victims of incest or rape, because that's a really tough situation. But I just recently started working for a nonprofit, and they distribute backpacks for people that have mobility issues, things like spinal muscular atrophy and just different body deformities and things where they just can't live life the way that I do. And, it's really unfair. It is really unfair. And my heart goes out because, I wake up and I'm like, I have to go to jury duty tomorrow, but I have legs that can walk and get up. Like I have different circumstances. You know, I was also born in circumstances where financially I didn't have the ability that other people had. I was just born into different things.
You were
Happened to
born
us,
into
is what I'm
poverty.
saying. Not true poverty. I think I was born into a lack of financial knowledge.
Or
But
okay.
but the point I'm trying to make is, you know, really sucky things happen to people, and it's unfair, you know. But I think how we navigate unfairness, you know, that doesn't make something that's wrong a right. Um, and you know, I remember when I was younger, I was thinking, okay, well, because people make fun of me because I live in a trailer or because I'm Asian and stuff, it's absolutely right for me to punch them in the face. No, it's never okay to punch somebody in the face. It's never okay to resort to that type of conflict. But it was definitely unfair, you know. And so to answer that question or that comment, what about incest and rape? I think while it is absolutely unfair and it really, really sucks. And just thinking that this person, I don't know, a 15-year-old girl, 14, 12-year-old girl, you know, might be the victim of that. I think, and once again, I'm qualifying this. I'm not saying that she just needs to get over it or whatever. I think once it becomes a baby, I don't know. To me, it's like, I really wish that women didn't have to be the vessel for a life. I think that really makes it super complicated.
Really? Did you like that bothers you that they have to be?
Well, just if the woman, okay, so if we could be like fish, we could just throw eggs out in the wild and we could just, you know, spray sperm all over the fish or whatever and just let it be, that'd be a completely different story, because then it wouldn't be an issue of, okay, aborting this baby or the whole concept of, you know, this is my body. Because I totally get that. I totally get that concept. But it, like we were talking about before, it is an entity within an entity. And it's like, how do you legislate when the life could be forfeit, or when does it become like you and me, we were fetuses at one point. Like, when did I become
Tim?
You know, when did it become illegal to kill me? You know, I don't know. That line of scrimmage is, I guess, what we're trying to figure out here. What are we saying in chat?
So let me go. I want to speak with even more clarity on that situation because, you know, I've already been through some hot heat and stuff, so I'm willing to continue to do that. But so my stance on that was something that used to really bother me. You know, what if she was raped? What if she was caught up in incest? What do you do in that situation? And so my perspective on the matter is, first of all, I think one of the biggest issues that we have is that I feel like there needs to be more help for those who have been through rape, who are needing to, like, women who need to have, like, having a child. There needs to be more support for women, cheaper birth care. Is that the right word? Because I know it could be very expensive to safely have a child.
Like
you
the
could
vitamins and the
well, just all
sonars. What are the things where they take a picture of the baby?
Well, I think the actual process of having the child could be in a normal
it's like
hospital.
$30,000.
Or I thought it was like around 10,000. It could be 30,000. It's somewhere around 10,000 last that I heard, and
that's a good chunk of change.
That was before 2020, which is still like a ridiculous amount of money. So cheaper and reliably safe ways of having children, and more funding to go into adoption clinics, more into educating people. I think that's all very important. But when it comes to when the rubber hits the road, and now there is a child inside of you, and that child is a part of you and a part of the person that raped you, that's still not you. That baby is a separate entity, and they're not the person that raped the woman. And it hit me in one day of recognizing that child was not involved. It was a result, yes, but the child was not involved in raping her.
Mm-hmm.
And so through aborting the child, it would be putting the sins of the father onto the child who had nothing to do with the situation, which I think is unfair for the child.
And the argument for abortion would come to that, or with regard to that, would say, okay, well, it's unfair to her too. I'm thinking about how in the Eastern Europe and all those places, they have all the issues where the women get hit with acid. You know what I'm talking about? Like the husbands would pour acid on the women and like disfigure their faces and stuff. And it's like,
goodness.
That was very unfair, and they have to live with that for the rest of their lives. And it's a similar situation like this. If a girl gets raped or, whatever, incest or just stuff happens. Like I was reading an article one time about how this girl sat on a toilet seat, and there had been a man that had gone in there and masturbated, ejaculated on the seat, and it got into her vagina, and she got pregnant from that. And she's like, where did this baby come from? Like it was a 1 in hundreds of million chance, but it happened. It's like,
talk about very big, that's very really small unfair. Chance of that happening.
And she didn't do anything wrong, because I think an issue for me, in thinking about this, and I really have to check my gut. I have to check myself in this, is when I think about people making a baby. Most of the time, it's because people engage in sex who aren't ready for it. And what I mean by that, like, I don't know, 16-year-olds that are like, ooh, seeing boobies for the first time. Looking at your boobs, Brandon. And then, they're at a party, they have sex. It's like, oh no, we're pregnant. Okay, well, this is going to ruin my life. Okay, well, let's fix this, right? And that's why they have things like the day after pill and whatnot. But, there's lots of people out there that are making very conscious decisions, doing delayed gratification or just delaying period, or not taking part period, because they don't want the consequence of X. That could be many things.
But there's the thing, we've spent a long time. A part of the reason why there is, like, if God is not in the equation, there should be no consequence to abortion. But there is a God, and that's something that we've established thoughtraid on. There is a God who created us, and in our word that we read says he forms us and knits us in our mother's womb. So he is actively involved in the process of creating everyone that exists, regardless of the decisions that they make. And he is not the one causing them to make those decisions, but he is the one that is forming them in the womb. And we're taking what he's creating and killing it.
Right. But here's the issue. And I'm sure, and let me know if you guys agree or disagree, but we have a nation full of people where it's divided.
I know.
And that's the thing. It's like, well, how do you hold people to this standard where you see this egregious sin, and I'll just say, I agree with you. Brandon and I think alike on this concept. Like, there is a God. We are all created. We all have a soul. That's what we believe.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's people that don't believe that are engaging in things or are the recipient of egregious acts towards them, they don't see that life.
That's where and that's why before I talked about the rightness or wrongness of the situation of the rape or incest, that's why I first talked about the necessity for more adoption clinics, more options to the woman, more help and more education. We as the church, if this is going to be something, we can't just create a void by pulling out Roe versus Wade. We need to fill it with Christ.
And Brandon, I'm really glad that you said that, because Timothy B., I think I know who you are. And we were talking about this the other night, but there's so many situations where Christians will cast a wide net on how people need to change, but they don't support them in that change, because it's very convenient just to tell people they need to change, but not help them do so, not experience it with them, and not help contribute to the answer. And that's where a lot of church hurt comes from as well. Like, a lot of people look at Christianity, and I think when it comes to Jesus, not Christianity, not religion, when it comes to Jesus, it makes sense. Jesus makes sense to people, but I think the breakdown is, there's a lot of us, myself included, who try to navigate a relationship with Jesus, but a lot of times we just like to exist in that liminal space of, oh, let me just pray this away. God will do it. But there was that Matthew West song that where he was singing, well, what about all the poverty and all the hurt in the world? God, why don't you do something? And then he said, I did. I made you.
Right.
Christians.
We need to not just overturn this. We need to step up and educate people on the sanctity of life and provide solutions that women can safely take as an alternative to this, so that way we're not just leaving someone without any options, period. Because unfortunately, far as I'm aware, abortion is cheaper than actually having the child. But the problem is, as with anything cheap, because we know this about food, we know this about other things you can get for cheap, there's always ramifications. So I have personal, not that I have had a wife who's gone through this, but I've had a very close situation of a coworker that I worked with at one point who got pregnant, and she struggled with whether or not she wanted to abort this child. And she tried to work things out with her husband, but her husband was not all there. And I don't know if he even is there, period, now. I'm not quite sure because I haven't really heard from her since I've changed jobs. But she was struggling with that. And so that was the first real experience that I had where I got to put my money where my mouth was, to, not just to preach to her and say, girl, don't have an abortion, but like actually do all the research I knew to do to find resources to, have the child safer and cheaper, so they don't have to worry about a big debt by having a child. Support from local churches to help out with food and everything. And I did that. I took the time to what was available, and there does exist different things that, like, there are. It's not well known unless you're like actively going to like pro-life rallies and stuff, and they'll probably have literature on it. But there are ways to have a birth in cheaper and still safe. And there are resources that are available to help with food and shelter even, mostly through churches, but sometimes that's the weird thing. We do sometimes rag on churches a lot, but they're
talking about you and me.
Yeah. And people outside of us.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of good churches that do have resources to help women who have, first of all, been without child, thinking about the child, like get women out of prostitution, to help women, have a safe place to stay or to talk to, or provide counseling to women to, help with grief. So that does exist, but we definitely do need more of it. And it does exist largely with churches, but there are other churches that just are not a shining example too, and that's what people will know about more than anything.
Well, I think a lot of people like the concept of doing something righteous. I mean, we see that whenever it comes to like movies and stuff. Like you see Mel Gibson, what was it that he said in Braveheart?
I've watched the snippets. I'm sorry, I can't be a resource for you in that.
Freedom! That's right.
Maybe that's what it was. That sounds right.
You get all gassed up, but when it comes to actually doing what it takes to be a hero to people, I think we can look at it through the lens of that's not exactly what I imagine this to look like. Like, I want to be a hero. I want to save somebody. I want to help somebody. But this isn't as pretty as I thought it was.
And it can often be dangerous.
Yeah.
Let alone not pretty.
Let's go through some of these comments that we missed. Valiant Thorv said, the abortion issue is similar in scope to the marijuana laws. Deathbane said, I don't think there is any objective right or wrong.
And Tim said, imagine federally mandated maternity leave in the USA. Shame it's unlikely to happen. Women do need more resources. I think it would be really good, though, to lobby? It's not the right word. But to support, instead of having, because I do know a portion of our taxes goes towards abortion. If we're going to overturn it on a federal level, to then not just overturn it, but turn it over to helping out women.
Yeah.
So that way, it's. I don't mind more taxes in the sense to help out another person go through things.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to see what you just described, Timothy, be of like maternity leave, like better. Like, I know it exists in like some companies, but not all over the place. And some of it could be financial reasons, some of it could be corruption, but that would be good. And to have, better alternative options. But yeah, instead of going from adoption, or from abortion, go to adoption, stuff like that, that would be good. So, so in the sense, again, this whole thing, it's circumstantial. And I do, again, I want to know, for those who are in hospitals, is there already options within the hospital that if there was a life-threatening situation with a birth, are there options to rescue the mother through, either aborting the child or obviously there's C-sections. I know there's that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that happens in the ER. Like if something happens and their life is in imminent danger, they have to make a call or a decision.
Yeah, so it has to be something that exists. So I don't think overturning Roe versus Wade is going to be those options just vanish.
Yeah, well, I want to backtrack a little bit because we were talking about fair versus right earlier. I want to talk a little bit about consequence. And
and that reminded me of the story. I'm sorry, continue, but I'll go back to the story.
Okay, don't forget because I want to hear it.
I'm putting a pin in it.
But just thinking about consequence, because I think watching our nation, and not just our nation. When I say our nation, I'm not that grandiose. Just watching people in my life and just experiences that I've seen with people I've grown up with, and then people in my sphere. There are genuine needs out there, and then there are some people who take advantage of the systems in place that fulfill those genuine needs. And I think we just don't like consequence, myself included. Like I just applied for financial aid because I'm going back to school, but we're totally capable of paying my tuition. It's like, do I really need that aid? Maybe not, but if it's free and it's being given to me anyways, why not take it? The reason I highlight that is because I want to humanize this and say I'm just as guilty as everybody else in these things. But looking at consequence, like, okay, you have somebody who, they already have 3 kids. They can barely take care of them. They don't have healthy lives, healthy communication. They're dropping the ball all over the place, and they're having unprotected sex, right? And it's like, honey, oh no, I'm pregnant with another kid. What are we going to do? Oh, we can't afford another kid. Let's have an abortion. It's a much different sell on, is it right or wrong, than, somebody that's going to die or just whatever other circumstance. Cause it's like you knowingly put yourself in this place where this could happen. Now there's something that you need to be responsible for and accountable for. And yeah, it's going to hurt your life, but you need to do this. But then somebody might say, okay, well, if they don't have an abortion and they have the kid, what quality of life is the kid going to have? And that's another topic, and somebody was talking to me about this the other day because they said, well, and it was a picture of a kid that was just laying on a mattress in some slums. And they said, do you think this is better than an abortion? And I'm curious what you guys think, but
that's another important situation to look at. So what if by having this kid, that the family will be in a poor situation, or they'll be born into a situation with bad parents or something of that nature? What's right or wrong in that situation? Like, is there a right, is there a wrong in that situation? And that's another one of those things where it's just like, apart from God, that's a terrible situation. If there is no God, that would be terrible. To be born in a situation where you have parents that would be bad, or if, you'd have crippling poverty and wondering where your meal is going to come next, because that would be a terrible situation. But that there is a God, and people who don't know God don't know of God's ability to provide, and for God's ability to provide not just even financial, because that's one aspect that God can provide, but wisdom and intelligence to the child to be able to turn, because there are intermixed with those pictures and stories, there are also stories of people who were definitely thrown up into adoption or whatever. It was grim, but then they came out of it, and then they became like, they figured out how to get into business, and they became like entrepreneurs, and they turned their life around, or they, one day they were able to help their parents through something. Like, intermixed with that, there are also stories where God was able to completely redeem the situation, and you won't know which one of those are going to happen if the child don't even have a chance, period. And not only that, they can happen regardless if you're born into whatever situation, because with God, he does provide for our needs. He can turn the situation around.
Yeah.
and people need to know that.
So let me read what Tim is saying real quick. He said, you mentioned being born into a financial hardship, Tim, and to me that's a big problem of overturning the Roe versus Wade decision. Assuming it's up to the states, it's not going to stop abortions, which I agree with. It stops who is able to have abortions. If you have means to go to another state, you'll be able to have one. And if you don't, you'll be stuck. More children in impoverished situations. But, just thinking about that, like, I agree. And I think people are going to have abortions if they want to have an abortion, just like people are going to smoke weed if they're going to want to smoke weed. It's going to happen. People are going to find a way. And that's why I don't just want to say, just criminalize abortions. But at the same time, I see an issue with them.
Right, but again, it's still... I gotta say, it's still, you have to take a step back from that and look broader. Like, again, and this is not me. I'm not trying to say that, like, I still just as much so think that there needs to be situations to help people in those that, help them, for that there be more churches stepping up to support for instance, single parent, single mother having a child, people that are financially struggling. There still needs to be more of that. But I feel like they're still missing the good that can come out of it, because by them being there, that, like, the more people...
Okay, can I jump in real quick?
What?
I just want to highlight, just talking about impoverished situations and, abortions, like in extreme situations. My dad, when his parents had him, I think they had like 4 or 5 children, and they lived in Thailand in the slums. And they didn't make a lot of money, and they just, like, you watch documentaries and you see those little grass huts on stilts. That's what they lived in Thailand, And then his parents died when he was 6 in a car accident, and he lived on the streets. He was a little orphan boy. Then he came over here to the United States, didn't speak any English, had to change his name from Boonton Tananat to Jimmy Denak. He had to choose his own name because there was not an English conjugation or translation, whatever.
Interesting.
And, just thinking, okay, well, here's this 6-year-old boy that has been abused by his siblings, taken advantage, living on the streets, not receiving an education. And then for 9 years, he lives with a brother-in-law that takes advantage, exploits him for labor. Then he has his first kid at 15, my sister. And then he gets divorced from that. His first wife never is in his daughter's life. And then he has me. And it's like, okay, well, what? And we grew up in a trailer. We didn't have a lot of money. I didn't go hungry. They made things happen. But I think, not saying that I'm spectacular or my story is crazy, because I think I just did the best with what I could. And just like my dad did the best with what he could, when you enter into a space where, okay, well, it seems like their life is going to be X, let's just go ahead and forfeit it. I think that's a really difficult call to make, because you never really know. Like, what if my grandparents, Prom and Thaw, it's my middle name, Prom and Thaw, Grandpa Prom and Grandma Thaw, what if they said, okay, well, we're not in a place to have kids, but we're pregnant, so we're actually going to have an abortion?
I might not even know you.
Yeah,
In fact, I wouldn't know you.
Yeah, that just makes me kind of sad. And I'm really thankful that they chose the hard path. Not saying that I'm thankful for all the crap they went through, because I'm sure it wasn't easy. I'm sure
Right, no.
my dad has had a really hard life, But I'm so glad that he decided, okay, well, we had a child. My brother wasn't planned, but they said, well, we're pregnant. We're going to make the best of this. Because we also don't want Tim to go through life without somebody.
Right. And then you got, okay, what about the situation where you can tell the baby is going to be born and they're going to be handicapped? Maybe they're going to
I have a really big fear of that.
They have autism or have Down syndrome, or what if they're going to be missing an arm? Whatever the situation, some kind of deformity, should you abort the child then? But I hear stories of people that decide to go through with that, and the consistent story that I hear, especially for those whose heart is open to the situation, like obviously people who are numb to it and they don't want anything to do with the situation and they want anything to do with God, usually they just don't learn from that. But for those whose hearts are truly open, and or even if they not initially, but then they get humbled, and honestly, there's been some people that have started off bad and then turn better. Oftentimes, more than not, I hear about how they're so grateful that they had that child because it taught them like love. The biggest thing, especially, is love like they had never known love before.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one of the top things that I hear when someone decides to go through with having a child who has some kind of, disability or deformity or something of that nature.
Yeah.
So it's even then it's redeemable. And I feel like we look at the immediate and we get fearful, or maybe we just get numb to the situation and we don't see beyond what could come out of it. And that's what I want really to do in part of educating people, is that it's not over because it's over. Like there could be so much more. And this is a big picture thing that I'm seeing. And I don't know if you might immediately see how it all fits in. But right now, the Earth's population of people is if I think it's getting very close to declining. Like you need a 2.1 birth rate in order to replenish those that are dying, so that we don't just lose. And it's like very close to that. In many like countries such as America and Japan and stuff like that, it's way below that. So like there are more people dying than they're being born. We in America have lived in absolute opulence, in comparison to a lot of different countries. We have, I last year I was kind of seeing that like what the situation was like in China. Like they went through situations where just power went out. There wasn't a storm. No one hit a power line. They could not produce enough power because of mismanagement of like not enabling people to do their jobs properly, but trying to over control things, and power would just go out. And other countries don't even have a government that could protect them. There is no police force. Like I know sometimes we worry about our police, and sometimes there are definitely policemen that should not be policemen. But we do have mostly a police force that stays out of our way and keeps the peace for the average person in the United States. We have a lot of working plumbing. We have a lot of different things that other countries could only dream of. Clean water. We can order something on Amazon and it can arrive the next day. Like a lot of conveniences. We've had that because we've had people. And with abortion and declining morality and moving away from God, that's now being tested. And I think part of the issue we're starting to deal with now is that we don't have the people to keep up with our own opulence. We've been, I just like we into this period of prosperity. I can get all these things for me and whatever and enjoy my life and be childless. And if I have a child, abort the child. And now we're starting to get the ramifications for that. And the whole, like a lot of the, like we're getting very close as the planet entirely to, we're not going to have enough people to keep up all that.
I find it, I'm not saying I disagree, but I find it hard to believe just because I know so many people who have tons of kids, and I just see so many people just hanging out. It just seems like, and there's so many places that, and this is a completely different conversation, but there's so many places hiring and all these people that are unemployed. It's like, okay, it just seems like I don't know. You might be right. I just find it hard to believe.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I still don't know exactly like how much of it is due to lower population and how much of it is due to people just refusing to work. And it could be a combination of both. But I do know that the trend of America right now is below the replenishment rate. And that's not today's problem, but it will definitely be tomorrow's problem down the road if it doesn't get changed.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, guys, because we're getting close to the end, is there anything that we have not covered, anything that we've not talked about, or anything that we've said that has kind of tickled your aggravations, irritations, or something you agree with? Let us know so we can cover it real quick as we go into the outro.
But the story. Uh, remembering that story while we wait for if anyone wants to say anything to that. So the situation with this coworker, I think there's just not enough education on the ramifications of abortion, though. Like, if it's a situation where it's life-saving, that's one thing. But if it's not, like, I don't think she's happier because she has more money. Like, since that point of she ended up deciding to go through the abortion, and got the abortion, and she has not been happier for it since that point. Like, she has dealt with serious depression and has tried to take her life a few times since that point. And like, that's another reason why I want to kind of overturn this.
Was the abortion the impetus for that, or was it something else that was a comorbidity?
Not that I'm aware of. She's a very happy person in general.
Oh.
But since that point, she's been really struggling with suicidal thoughts. And there's just, because it's up front, it seems like a good idea because, I'm making a financially good idea. I'm maybe not in the emotional right space. But on the back end of it, to have the knowledge that you took that child's life for whatever reasons you have, that does weigh on a person, legitimately. And I don't think, and that's why I'm not for Planned Parenthood and abortion clinics, maybe through hospitals, sure, but not through them, because it's just from my studies of Planned Parenthood, they make their money through the abortions. They're not going to, they often, from what I've heard, from the testimonies I've seen, they encourage women towards the abortions rather than away from it. The other things that they say they do is not really the main focus. What they do, they're not going to make money if you don't have an abortion. They do pressure women to having abortions. The only really defense against that are the people outside the abortion clinic saying, hey, there are better ways about going about this.
Also, I just want to add a disclaimer here because, it's really easy when addressing things like this to cast a wide net encompassing everybody. I'm sure there are some people in there whose goal is to actually help these women to make wise decisions.
I know that, but the company as a whole.
I know. I'm just saying, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater of all times to make that
I didn't
joke.
intend that.
Tim, please. Okay.
Yeah, and also I do want to say, somebody brought this up earlier, and I completely agree. If you have been with us listening to this, or if you're watching it in the future, I want you to understand that we are two straight white males who are never going to get pregnant. And so it's like...
You're not white.
I'm as white as anybody. Come on. The point I'm trying to make is we're two males. We're never going to get pregnant. And, the decisions around abortion are really difficult. And it's complex. There's no easy answer for any of it. And so anything that we've said, I just want to communicate that people are going through stuff. People are hurting. Stuff is really real. Life and death is very real. There is a truth out there, but at the same time, there are people and there are human situations.
Well, I feel like to sum it up, it needs to be said. I want to create a summary of at least of my beliefs. That we need to be able to. We need more than just overturning Roe v. Wade. We need to have better ways of dealing with the situation. We need to have more support go to adoption. We need to have more support for single mothers in general, safer, less expensive ways of having a baby. There's a need for that. And I think we need to be stepping up more as the church to provide for people, rather than just saying don't have abortion and that's it, and just leave them with that. Just like, saying don't be cold and they have nothing to wear and you don't provide anything to wear. No, there needs to be something to replace this hole if and when it gets removed. With Roe v. Wade being turned down. So something needs to be done about that. And I think we need to be putting our money where our mouth is when we're telling people and encouraging them not to get aborted, not to have an abortion, providing solutions in the cases where, again, it's not a life-threatening thing to the woman. Providing solutions, providing help, providing counsel. Like, we need to not just say it, but also help. because sometimes you are the solution. The adoption clinic may not be built yet. It may not be ready yet. You can't just defer to it yet, but you can help in some shape, way, or form. So I do want to encourage and empower that you can be the solution to make a difference in that person's life. You could be the person to adopt the child. She has the child and you adopt the child. There are different ways of handling a situation that are emotionally healthier and physically healthier. And that's a whole other thing, ramifications. It's dangerous physically for a woman to have an abortion. It can kill her. Like, that is a real possibility within having an abortion. It's not like abortion is just safe.
Well, so can birth.
It can damage. Well, yeah, but like to say that like it's some kind of it's not just some easy way. Like, it has its own issues, and just the whatever process they take to pull the child out can hurt her too. So there's that. But that being said, education is important, and so with that said, also it's important not to hate. Once the decision is made, whatever decision she goes in, it's important not to force her into a decision, and it's important not to hate her for the decision, but to continue to love her, whatever the decision is. But it's love in truth.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, Brandon, because I've just been thinking about how to tie this up in a bow, because everybody's looking for a solution. Everybody's looking for what is the answer. And I think, if I think about it scripturally, because there's a lot of ways that Tim thinks and feels, but there are definite truths out there. Like Deathbane said that he doesn't believe in objective right or wrong. Like, yeah, we can agree to disagree on that, but I believe there is an objective right or wrong. But I think it's one of those things where, the Bible says that we're supposed to seek out our own salvation.
Through fear and trembling.
Yeah, and what that looks like, especially in relationship with God, is allowing God into our hearts to work on things that from here until we die are going to be an improvement, moving from unhealthy to healthy. And we're on different scales with that. And we have to be accountable for whatever we choose. And so if somebody chooses abortion, well, there are negative consequences that come along with that, but I don't want to just abandon that person. If somebody chooses not to abort, there's also negative consequences for that as well that you have to endure. But I think the key there, as far as reconciling all of this, is being willing to walk with people regardless of what they choose. And as far as legislating morality, I'm so glad I don't have to make that choice, because I don't think there is an answer that fits everything, even when it comes to God, because I've seen God go in two separately, mutually exclusive directions regarding the same issue with two different people.
It depends on the person.
Yeah.
Because, the reality is one person's heart could be in one place, and so for them it's perfectly fine. Another person could be in a completely different place, and it's destructive for them, and it's not fine for them.
Yeah, and there's been stuff in my own life where there is an objective truth that I know that I'm ignoring. And in my relationship with God, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, it's like, why is he not convicting me of this right now? It's like he takes a very roundabout way, and then 7 years down the road, oh, okay, so I feel differently about this now. And he always brings me back to, okay, well, this is really what he was trying, the root, but sometimes it just takes time. And sometimes the process of sanctification doesn't look the way that we would like to think it looks.
That's a lifelong process, I think.
Yeah, but all that to say, like, should we legislate morality when it comes to abortion?
I personally think that we should overturn this. Like, even understanding the difficulties that it will create, I think that this would give an opportunity for us to step up as the church and to encourage others to step up to provide solutions. Because from what I have seen, it causes the woman more pain and more damage to go through the abortion than it is to go through and have the child, because the child could be put up, like, if you truly can't take care of the child, there is ways people can adopt the child. You can put the child up for adoption, stuff of that nature. There is, like in the situation of your father, that look at where we've come from that point. He grew up in absolute poverty, and you now have a whole house. Like, in one generation, things have turned around. And you're there to be able to help him and to honor him and stuff. So it's like, I feel like there's more good that comes out of it than bad. I do think there needs to be work done on the other end of it, but I personally, I'm going to stand with we should continue through with toppling this thing, because I think it's only caused issues for this country, because people definitely have abused it, especially those who went into the industry of abortion and
I
made
would
an
agree with
industry out
that.
of it. Yeah.
But I think where I slightly disagree, I'm so glad I'm not a lawmaker. I don't know if you guys follow the Enneagram. I used to be a 9. Whatever that means. But, just thinking about in my field, just thinking about life and relationship coaching and whatever, I base everything on a relationship with Jesus and free choice and everything. And when I think about the Garden of Eden, God created the garden and God created man, and he saw that it was good. And when he created man, he said, this is very good. When he created a person, a human being, breathed life, saw that it was very good. But then he did something interesting. In that garden that was perfect, he put 2 trees, tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So he created life and saw that it was good, but also put choice in their hands, knowing that they could choose to forfeit that life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really tough for me, because I want to say, yeah, let's overturn Roe versus Wade. Let's make abortion illegal, because I think, murder is sinful, and but there's so many ways to spin it where it's like, well, God, but what about this? And where I can't comprehend, but the Bible also says don't lean on your own understanding. But if God puts people in a place where he saw that things were perfect, but he also gave them choice, I think my stance on this is, I know that people should have the ability to choose, but I just wish they chose differently sometimes. Once again, that sounds very insensitive. And once again, I'm not applying this to all situations, because I can't relate, and I don't feel what a lot of people are going through. So I don't want to be insensitive to that.
I don't know if it's insensitive to wish that people would make better choices.
Well, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't want to say, well, just make better choices. It's not that easy.
I know you're not saying that, though. I personally know you're not saying
Yeah.
that. And for those who don't know us, that's not what he's saying.
Thank you, Brandon, and everybody else. But yeah, I think that's my stance. I think I want to say pro-choice, but also pro-life at the same time. I wish those two could go hand in hand.
Well, I mean, I do think there should be ways to safely, again, if the situation is life-threatening to the woman, I definitely do think there should be safe ways to abort the child, I think. That's one of those things that could change down the road if God convicts me of it, but in this moment, I could very much so understand if my life is I'm choosing between this child or me, and the child could kill me. Like, that's, I don't know what life is more valuable in that situation, if you will. I know what the scriptures say about, it's better to lay your life down for another. So that does sit on my mind, and I do wonder about that. But I can very much so understand and be compassionate on the person who does not want to die and having that child. And so I can't really say right or wrong in that.
I think like your coworker who chose an abortion now has to live with
the regret.
Well, I don't want to say just regret, because I know there's other things there too, but just the I'll say consequences, both good and bad, of her decision. It's going to be, there are going to be consequences either way. And I think that's just the real of it. Whatever the choice is, there are going to be consequences. And I think if we're really loving people well, we shouldn't see them as somebody who got an abortion or somebody who didn't choose an abortion. We should see them as people who have gone through something tough or are going through something tough regardless, and loving them regardless of the decision they made.
Yeah. No, yeah, and the love should not cease. God does not stop. He is love. He cannot hate. Like, he cannot hate. He does hate. He does hate sin. Like, we know that biblically, but he does not hate us. He continues to love us. But the thing is that love and truth do go hand to hand, and love and justice are still two things. So just figuring out, I feel like in those situations, the important thing to do is to go to God about it and to ask God, what should I do in this situation? Because if I have this child, this could very much so end up ending my life. But if I, don't have this child, will this be a sin kind of thing? Like, or what would you want to do in this situation? So I definitely encourage going to God about that, because he knows the situation better than we do. And he could completely take care of it entirely, where there is no death, and it's a win-win for both, because that is very much so something that God can do. And some things are just like, you have not because you ask not. Like, so I want to increase faith here and say God can turn what should be a binary situation of you either have the child and die or don't have the child and live. He can completely eradicate that, and you have the child and live. So I want to encourage that, and God has the ability to turn things that are negative around for good, and we only have to ask. So I definitely do want to encourage that way. But in other situations, Tim, like in situations of, well, I don't feel like I financially can do so, well, I'm feeling some sort of way or whatever, like I think then that point it's good to remind people that this is another living being on the inside of you with their own developing life and eventually personality and everything that will come out of that. And I think there needs to be more of a realization and focusing in on that this is someone separate from you, someone, not a thing, regardless if that has a beat or not. Life has begun. The cells are dividing and multiplying into another being rapidly over the course of months. So I don't know. That's kind of where I stand on that. What are you pulling up here?
Well, I remember Daniel suggested that one scripture verse in Numbers to me. I think it's just worth reading briefly.
Let's hear what it says.
It's Numbers 5:11. And it says, "And the Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. Suppose a man's wife goes astray, and she is unfaithful to her husband and has sex with another man, but neither her husband nor anyone else knows about it. She's defiled herself, even though there was no witness, and she's not caught in the act. If her husband becomes jealous and is suspicious of his wife and needs to know whether or not she has defiled herself, the husband must bring his wife to the priest. He must also bring an offering of 2 quarts of barley flour to be presented on her behalf. Do not mix with olive oil or frankincense, for it's a jealousy offering, an offering to prove whether or not she is guilty. The priest will then present her to stand trial before the Lord. He must take some holy water in a clay jar and pour into it dust he has taken from the tabernacle floor. When the priest has presented the woman before the Lord, he must unbind her hair and place her hands in the offering of proof. Place in her hands the offering of proof, the jealousy offering to determine whether her husband's suspicions are justified. The priest will stand before her, holding the jar of bitter water that brings a curse to those who are guilty. The priest then will then put the woman under oath and say to her, if no other man has had sex with you, and you have not gone astray and defiled yourself under your husband's authority, may you be immune from the effects of bitter water that bring on the curse. But if you have gone astray by being unfaithful to your husband and have defiled yourself by having sex with another man, ... That's what it says, ... Well, hyphen technically. At this point, the priest must put the woman under oath, saying, may the people know that the Lord's curse is upon you when he makes you infertile, causing your womb to shrivel and your abdomen to swell. Now may this water that brings the curse into your body and cause your abdomen to swell and your womb to shrivel. And the woman will be required to say, yes, let it be so. And the priest will write these curses on a piece of leather and wash them off into the bitter water. He will make the woman drink the bitter water that brings on the curse, and when the water enters her body, it will cause bitter suffering if she is guilty. Let's see, I think... And then it just goes on to talk more about this.
But the situation.
This is the ritual law for dealing with suspicion. I don't know. So Daniel, I've told you I would read that on stream, and I did. I think it's kind of interesting because it kind of does depict what an abortion looks like biblically.
I guess, maybe. It sounds more like a test to see if whether or not she was or was not sexually promiscuous outside of marriage.
Yeah. I think if I reach, I could see how it could support abortion.
It does feel like more like a reach, though. It doesn't really feel like that's anything to do actually with abortion. It feels more like a reach.
Yeah.
Because that really does honestly look more like this person feels like she has had sex outside of the marriage, and we're trying to figure out the situation, not she's needing to have an abortion. And that's more so like, I don't know, it's different. I don't know. I can't take that interpretation.
Yeah. Either way, Daniel, I just want to say thank you for bringing that to my attention because I'd actually never Actually, I've read the entire Bible before, but sometimes you just breeze over things.
Well, I've read the entire Bible multiple times, and I still don't remember all the details because there's a lot.
Yeah, but anyways, I just really appreciate you bringing me a new perspective, because I never want to think or feel that I have everything completely figured out.
No. It's one of those things where we learn more about a situation. We can read it and we can see it, and then the next day we can read it again and then see something we didn't see the first time. And it's not that I see something different, it's that I didn't see it like that, and now I have greater revelation on it than I had previously.
Yeah. Well,
so anyways, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, I guess, guys, in closing for real this time, I just want to say, if you're caught up in all this swell of Roe versus Wade and the social media backlash either side is getting, I just want you to know that you don't really have to have it completely figured out. And I think you just need to do the best to make a smart decision on your own. Just understanding that you are responsible regardless of what decision you make, for the good and the bad. I think there is an objective truth, and I think that if you have the right posture of being willing to listen and being willing to be wrong, I think that's how you figure it out. Because I think we avoid truth by thinking, I've got it completely figured out. Because if you're right and somebody presents you with something that you've never considered before, the truth will show through. But if you're wrong and you have a heart position of, I might be wrong, well, worst case scenario is you're showing what the truth is.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
Well, the fact of the matter is, just kind of, I don't know, this kind of hit me. Our ancestor Adam and Eve partook of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but God put that tree there. So why are we trying to differentiate ourselves what is right and what is wrong in situations that are gray? Instead, not go to God and have Him help us differentiate between what is right and what is wrong.
Because that's why we have social media. We're supposed to go to social media for that stuff, Brandon. We're
Yeah.
supposed to go to the left or the right
the internet
for those
where everything
answers.
is true. Yeah, no, we can go to God. I think I really want to end this with, I don't think that abortion is right in the most general sense, and I do think that it should be abolished. But I do think that in situations where it begins to become gray, we should go to God and go to Him for direction on what to do, because He is the one. We have the knowledge of good and evil, but we do not have the necessarily discernment without Him, apart from Him, on what is right and what is wrong. Some of it's obvious through nature itself, and the Bible talks about that He's written His laws into nature, but it's up to Him to help kind of navigate the differences between the two, and it should be asked what that would be. And I understand that there also, since we brought up Numbers, that there is some interesting laws that were written into not just Numbers, but I guess Leviticus and Deuteronomy. But I also know that, like, the way that Jesus goes about things, He has fulfilled the law. And those that are in Him are not in the law. They are dead to the law and alive to Him, but He is still the Word. And so we are under His governance. So it doesn't mean we are free to do whatever we want, but we are, instead of under the law, we are under Christ. So I know that some of those things, Christ has a different perspective, like not a different perspective, but like a different way of handling it than the law does. Mm-hmm. That's another story entirely, but I felt like I wanted to bring that up since you just was reading Numbers. Because I don't know who's going to come across this in the future. Welcome to this winding trail that we've taken.
Brandon, can we pray real quick?
Since that's on your heart, you do that. But yes, we can.
Yeah. Well, God, thank you for Brandon. And thank you for the people that are listening to this, whether it's current or in the future. I just want to say thanks that we get to be sheep and we get to hear your voice, and that we don't have to be perfect. We just have to seek after your heart and learn what it means to love. And the people that disagree with me and Brandon, or disagree with whoever, just glad that you love them as much as you love us, and that you're taking them through the same process of sanctification. And you're in pursuit of their hearts too. And I know that you're outside of death. I know that you're outside of abortion. I know that you're outside of injustice. And I know that you care, God. I know that you have a plan. Just thanks for being a sovereign God that actually gives a crap. And I just want to pray for all the people that are navigating this, God. Would you give them peace to not feel like they have to have a pedestal? And I just ask that you subdue the urgency that comes with all these social media hypes and all these cultural agendas. Just want you to pray your peace over everybody that's listening today.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you've gotten something out of this and you enjoyed it, make sure to like it and to subscribe to us, hitting the bell notifications so that you can be with us when we go live again. Do you have anything else coming up this week that I need to be aware of that you won't be able to be part of Friday or Saturday? I don't think.
I don't know. I might be here this week. I don't know.
But regardless, I'm pretty sure I don't have anything that coming up, so we'll be live again this Friday. So I would love to have you there for that. We'll be playing some more games, probably Overwatch. If I were to guess, it would be probably Overwatch, but we'd love to have you be a part of that. So with that said, all in all, we broadcast every week on Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'd love to have you be a part of that. Thank you guys for watching. You guys have a good night.
I can see far away. Yeah, I can see far away from where I've been. He says I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus, you're alive.